Hey, I'm Deja, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here and like all things art and makeup, hit that subscribe button to follow along with me on my artistic journeys. In this video, I'll be doing a tutorial for a bold graphic liner with a double flick, accompanied with some contrasting shadows to make it pop. To start off, I like to use a full coverage concealer, like the Clinique Beyond Perfecting concealer I have here. Then, I'll mix it with some eyeshadow primer on a palette or on the back of my hand. Adding the eyeshadow primer creates more of a grip to the base, giving you a higher color payoff, while creating a smooth foundation to blend your eyeshadows on. I clean leftover Starbucks drink stoppers and use them as palette knives to apply to my eye, making sure not to do it on the one with makeup on it like I almost did. To blend it out, I use a stiff angled Sigma brush with a similar shape to a fingertip, using tapping and soft sweeping motions to blur out the edges and set to my skin. Next, I do my brows. I use the soft brown dip brow from Anastasia and the number 7 angled brush. Pro tip, I find doing that opaque base on your eyelid before applying your brow can actually help create a nice sharp line with less hassle. I start by relaxing my face, then slightly arching my brow to help achieve the shape I want. To shape them, I follow the growth of my hair for the front portion, then use confident, bold strokes for the tail structure. For the front, I use wispy strokes that follow the natural hair growth to help create a more natural looking yet structured brow. After that, I brush them out, still following the growth of the hairs, until any unnatural looking hard lines soften. Then I take the brush I use to blend out the base and clean up the edges. Onto the eyeshadows. To make my life easier with blending, I usually add an eyeshadow the same color as my skin tone to my brow bone. This helps prevent hard lines from forming as you blend. For the crease color, I'm mixing a coral and an orange tone together from the City Color Carnival palette. I apply them with a fluffy brush, blending upwards and outwards using a large finger 8 motion. I go pretty high up on my brow bone with this transition color to compensate for my deep-set hooded eyes. To assist with shadow placement, I'll angle my head so my hand will naturally fall and blend in the angle that I want it to. It makes it so I work smarter, not harder, essentially. I'll gradually add color and blend it out with a clean brush to build opacity, as it's easier to add than take away. Next, I use a mid-sized, flatter shadow brush to apply a mix of these 3 pinky purple shades to define the crease, and thus the shape of my eye. I'm using the NYX Ultimate palette. To apply, I follow the same method as before. Place color with a more precise brush and blend it out with a larger clean brush. To explain that method, what I like to do is sandwich a lighter and a darker color together. I'll use a smaller, denser brush and I'll apply that right into the crease in my eye, going slightly above my brow bone. I'll deepen that a little bit until I find the depth is going to stay true if I blend it out and put other colors on top. Then what I'll do is I'll grab a fluffy brush and I'll buff out any hard edges just to make sure it's going to be a nice soft blend. And I'll repeat that process, sandwiching colors lighter and darker until I achieve that depth of color that I'm looking for, to make sure that it's really going to make my eye stand out and enhances my natural eye shape. To add some brightness to the outer edge and to act as a transition shade, I use a large fluffy brush and blend some mid-toned yellow over the entire crease. This also buffs out any hard edges that were left behind in the crease definition process. I then further define the crease by using a mix of mid-toned and darker toned purple. This creates a beautiful burgundy tone as it mixes with the previous colors. I then clean off a brush to precisely blend out the color I just placed, then use a bigger fluffy brush to softly buff out the edges. I'll continue this process using darker and darker tones in the same color family until I achieve the depth of color I'm after. To create a cut crease, I use the Beyond Perfecting Concealer and a medium-sized rounded synthetic haired brush. I actually took a brush from a new pack of paintbrushes I'd purchased because it was perfect shape and density. For my eye shape, I go above my natural crease so you can actually see it when I have my eyes open. The joys of hooded eyes. Make sure you apply in smooth, fluid motions to achieve a nice crisp line. Next, I'm going to be using a beautiful teal color from the NYX Ultimate palette, one of my favorite palettes. And I'm going to be packing that on with a smaller, dense brush using tapping motions. I find this gives me the highest color payoff for those really bold colors. I'm going to sweep it towards the outer edge, and after that I'm going to add some green in there to add a little bit of a depth towards the outer edge. I'm going to tap that on and use sweeping motions. And after I apply that color, I'm going to be buffing it in with a fluffier brush to buff out any edges in the outer corner of my eye, using the same process as before, essentially adding color on and buffing it out as I go. After that, I'm adding a medium blue to the outer corner of my eye. This is going to further define and enhance my eye shape, so it's going to stand out a little bit more. To blend that out, I'm going to use a clean, fluffy brush and just buff it out towards the outer edge of my eye using those figure 8 motions beforehand, and then tilting my head and letting my hand naturally fall to add that shape in there. On to the lower lash line. I start with the same colors that I used in the crease. Pro tip, colors apply darker under the eye than they do on the eyelid, so just be careful of that. To build and blend the color, I follow the same gradual application process as before, using darker and darker tones in the same color family to achieve the depth of color I want, blending in between each color. Next, the bold graphic liner. For this, I used the Suva Beauty Hydro Liner in Aztec, and another brush I snagged from a paint set. Those really do work wonders.
Holy Jesus! What is that? What the fuck is that?
See someone that you know and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I apply my liner with my eyes open and my face as relaxed as possible. This helps me to achieve the best lash lines while being able to maintain complete control. In order to create the double flick, what I do is follow the top of the cut crease along my natural bone structure parallel with the bottom flick. Then I draw a V to connect the top and the bottom line together, and I fill that puppy in. Oh, symmetry, you fickle beast. I've yet to conquer you, but shall one of these days. To balance out the top and bottom of my eye, I like to add some brightness to my waterline. I used the Kat Von D whiteout and put that on my waterline as a base, and packed on the same teal tone that I used on my lid over the white to make it stand out. After that, I deepened my lower lash line to make my eyes appear larger, using a bit of a purple tone, the same that I used in my crease beforehand. To start my lashes off, I like to use the Benefit They're Real Tinted Lash Primer. I don't add mascara until after I finish my complexion. I like to give my primer a bit of time for it to set to give me that false lash effect. For my complexion, I start with concealer and apply that in a checkmark shape under my eye with a smaller dome-shaped brush. Before I blend that, I'm going to be applying my foundation. The foundation I'm using is the Clinique Beyond Perfecting Foundation. That one has a wand inside of it. I use the wand to apply to my skin so it applies in a thinner layer. You don't want to apply too much foundation to your skin because that can cause creasing and that just doesn't necessarily feel very comfortable on your skin. I blend out the concealer with the same brush I use for the eyeshadow base, using stippling and pulling down motions, kind of like it with the finger. That way it gives you a really nice natural blend and sets it into the skin really nicely. Then I use a Sephora brush that kind of looks like a beauty blender. And if you actually use it just like a beauty blender, I find it works the exact same way. I love it. It works phenomenally for reducing texture. I have extremely dry skin, and this can make my skin look so soft and supple. It's amazing. Ooh, look at that skin. Looks so soft, looks so hydrated, so blended. Yes. Yes. I like to go in with a little bit more of a precise brush around my eyes to blend in the complexion to make sure I didn't miss anything and to make sure that there isn't any excess buildup or any like chunks of extra foundation anywhere. Not that you should have any chunks of foundation on your face. After I finish blending my complexion, I like to go around on my eyes and make sure that I didn't mess up any hard lines that I wanted to be hard line, or if I didn't create any hard lines that I didn't want to be there. So I'll go in and I'll touch up my eyeliner just to make sure that that's nice and crisp. I'll also go double blend any of the soft shadows that I wanted to keep soft. That way you just have this really nice, finished, perfect, like rounded look. For contouring, I like to use creams and powders. I start off with the Makeup Forever contouring palette, number 30, with the contour color and a domed brush. It's kind of the same shape I use for the concealer. I apply that and I start at the top of my ear and go towards the corner of my mouth, about 2 to 3 fingers away. And to blend that, I like to use a pretty dense kind of flat edged brush, and I blend that down and I push upwards as well. That way it kind of chisels out your cheekbones and gives you a really nice natural blend. So after that cream contour's all blended, I'll grab a big old fluffy brush and a bronzer, any bronzer will work, and I'll put that on over top of the contour that I just applied with creams. What that does is it deepens the tone a bit, it softens out the tone, it also sets that cream in underneath. It sets the foundation, sets that cream contour, so it's not going to go anywhere. To deepen that, I use the Smashbox Powder Contour Kit with a smaller domed contour brush to chisel out my cheekbones a little bit more. I follow the same shape from the top of my ear towards the corner of my mouth, making sure not to go too close to the corner of my mouth, about 2 to 3 fingers away. And I blend straight, I go straight up and down and I push it upwards towards my eye. That way I have a more concentrated color towards the bottom and it gets lighter, kind of gives you a gradient up towards the top of your cheekbone. For my jawline, I do a light dusting to balance out my face, so I'll go from the bottom of my earlobe down under my chin. I like to add a bit of blush to bring the color back into my cheeks from using a pretty full coverage foundation. When you apply your blush, make sure you do a big old cheeky smile. What that does is it actually helps the placement of your blush. It concentrates it more to the apples of your cheeks. After that, I do one final buff to make sure everything's all good, and then I'll give my face a nice spray with either a setting spray or a hydrating mist, depending on which I have on hand. That helps to keep it in place and also to hydrate my skin because it's so dry. After that, I'll spray some onto a brush, and then I'll grab some highlighter. What that does is it makes it so the highlighter will apply really strongly. I kind of dip it in and I kind of tap it onto the tips of my cheekbones and bring it around in a C shape up into my temples. Then you really want to make sure you blend that in. With highlighters, the more you blend, as you can notice, it gets a bit more shimmery and shiny. You also want to make sure you don't have any hard lines between your bronzer and your contour and your highlighter. That will just end up making your skin have a Neapolitan look. After that, you want to add a little bit to under your brows. That'll just create this really beautiful glowing halo. Now is the time when I like to add my mascara at the very, very end. This just kind of finishes everything off and makes sure that it gives me that really beautiful false lash effect. I like to wiggle it back and forth at the root and then pull it up towards the ends. That really gives me beautiful volume as well as lift. To complete the look, I'm adding a lip liner as a lipstick that's a couple shades darker than my natural lip tone. For the top lip, I like to go from the outer edge towards the center. What that does is it adds more volume, and for the bottom lip, I like to go from the center towards the outer edge. That kind of helps to even out the volume a little bit. It helps to make it more nice and balanced. That's my preference for my lip shape. After that, I like to fill it in completely and just like to clean up any edges to make sure it's nice and crisp.